Hello there. Europe is changing. More and more people are waking up to the woke horror that has almost been foisted upon us by stealth. More and more people in the Western world are saying, I didn't want this, and I certainly did not vote for it, nor did I give my approval for it in any way. And they were gaslit by the woke brigade into thinking they were a minority that would be cancelled if they spoke out. But as time goes on, the majority are becoming more vocal and realising that those who shouted them down, calling them bigots for even thinking about questioning the current open borders policies so prevalent in the developed world, are really the minority. A minority with a political agenda of dividing and ruling, and imposing some sort of ultra-controlling Marxist state on all of us. And part of their agenda is to make us feel guilty for merely being who we are, guilty for the advances we've made. And they twist our history to suit their agenda and use it to lie to or mislead us about our past. And one of the latest is a story from BBC News saying, Black women of African descent were more likely to die of the medieval plague in London, academics at the Museum of London have found. All based on 145 sets of remains from 3 grave sites. And straight away the finding is made that it was all down to racism. There was no NHS back then, and people were forced to be much more self-reliant, and other behavioural, cultural and religious factors might have been at play. I just get the impression that the answer for academia must always be racism. So we now have to shoehorn every single finding of theirs into it. And another such story is that of the Roman Emperor Elagabalus, well known for his brutality. The story being that he sometimes wore women's clothing. So he's now become a sort of trans champion. However, it is also claimed that the story about him wearing women's clothing came from another emperor who wanted to sully the name of Elagabalus. And it's this sort of tosh that puts ordinary people's backs up. Ordinary folk are beginning to question these things and wake up to the fact, yes, fact, that they've been gaslit into silence by being convinced that they are a small bigoted minority who should remain silent. But more and more people are finding out that they are the ones in the overwhelming majority. That those who throw the charges of bigotry and racism about are just a very small but vocal bunch of lefty zealots. And in that bunch I include a goodly proportion of our elected and unelected politicians, as well as the civil serpentry and most in academia. The small motley crew of lefty zealots that demand open borders, that Marxist-style policy that the vast majority of people in the West do not want and were never asked about before it was imposed on us. And it's not just the Western world. While berating Israel for having the audacity to defend itself, the South African government is mulling over proposals from its Department of Home Affairs to withdraw from the UN Refugee Convention and then rejoin after cherry-picking which rules it wants to follow. And their Home Affairs Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, said in a press conference earlier this month that South Africa does not have the resources to grant the socio-economic rights envisaged in the 1951 Convention. With South Africa being the largest recipient of people in the region. And the South African Department of Home Affairs also wants to see a safe first country rule that would deny asylum to people who transit through other countries to get there. Quite informative, what? Anyway, looking around social media and newspaper comment sections, there is a clear division between the woke and those that want to preserve their own way of life. But we are now seeing the so far cowed silent majority beginning to find its voice, and there is a clear fight back against the gaslighting wokesters whose arguments grow thinner by the day. Even now they are continually trying to push out the message that something is peaceful that so evidently is not. They are trying to portray the victim here as the aggressor, and embellish that narrative with so many lies that the gullible are so willing to accept as the truth. The only question now being that as the silent majority awakens from its slumber, can we still fix this thing politically? Richard.
I have seen enough footage on social media of what is going on the streets of Britain and Europe to know that soon there will be a terrible backlash. I have also been to cities in this country that many Brits foolishly believe are no longer British, even though they still have British place names. Why on earth would Brits be thinking that these places are no longer British? How racist of them. Anyway, something has changed. The demographic that many Brits foolishly believe now controls many parts of this country are perceived by some as emboldened. And now that the police will do absolutely nothing to stop these people from, let's politely say, expressing themselves on the streets, well, how can so many people, how can Brits be so discriminating against these people? They must be racists. Sorry, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but for now this demographic is still in the minority. And when this backlash does occur, I fear it will be the face of the silent majority who will unfortunately outnumber them at this point, and this silent racist majority will make the wrong decision to oppose the oppressed minority. And that will not be pretty, but the fury inside the silent majority is now bubbling over. I'm seeing it all over social media. And I fear that once the cork has popped, there will be no stopping what happens next. It's not what any decent Brit would want, of course, but decent Brits now wrongly believe they face the forced choice of assimilation into let's just say, a certain belief system, or face the as to now unopposed opposition of the minority. But the anger is there, and our king, our politicians, and our media are resolute in rightly ignoring the anger of the many, and rightfully supporting the change in demographic. Oh yes. But one day I am afraid something will happen, and the silent majority will misguidingly say, no more, and the march will begin. And those that hate this country and its culture and people may, unfortunately, face the children and descendants of those whose memorials they have desecrated recently, and they will find the blood of those who died on French beaches and in French fields still runs through the veins of their children, their grandchildren, and their great-grandchildren. This is something, of course, I vehemently oppose. Just imagine the terrible consequences of the silent majority saying, no more. It doesn't bear thinking about, does it? No more will old ladies be afraid to walk to the shops in the daytime, or young ladies be fearful to walk home at night because they will do them harm. No, they will run. They will run to where they can express themselves. Yes, telling everyone that they pass on the way not to venture across the sea, because the men of that island have foolishly and wrongly woken up and are standing up on every street corner at night, watching out for their parents and children so no harm can come to them. Of course, I am completely opposed to this silent majority standing up. Yes, it's just something that unfortunately I can foresee happening, isn't it? Anyway, throw your thoughts all over Jeff and myself in the comment section below for us to have a good read of. And thanks to those of you that keep this channel going with your donations via Patreon, PayPal and Super Thanks. Links in the descriptions box below on how to support us. They really do make a difference. And anyway, God bless you all, and bye for now.